Hello, welcome to NACTV Reads the Press. My name is Jackie Snyder, and I am one of many volunteers that help create programming for our station. You may be joining us online, Neepawa Access Live, WCG 12, Channel 30 Direct Sight Line, MTS 30 or Bell Express View 592. These broadcasts are made possible by our volunteers, staff, advertisers, and donations by viewers like yourself. If you enjoy what you see and hear, please consider supporting us by a donation or by volunteering. Contact our office at 204-476-2639 or NACTV at wcgwave.ca. So this is the Neepawa Press of Wednesday, May the 3rd, and some pictures on the front page of a hometown hockey hero. And these photos were taken from the NACI Yearbook Committee. NACI was thrilled to host Haley Krzyzaniak at noon on Thursday, April 27th. Students Sydney McLaughlin and Riley Gluska led the assembly, while Kenzie Ranke and Brenna McLaughlin presented her with a gift to thank her for visiting the school. Krzyzaniak is a member of the Canadian national hockey team and just returned from the World Championships, where the team won a silver medal. This is Krzyzaniak's third World Championship silver medal, having played as part of the 2016 and 2015 teams as well. In 2012, she also won a gold medal at the World Under-18 Championships as part of Canada's Under-18 national team. So in the picture above and from the left, Sydney McLaughlin, Brenna McLaughlin, Haley Krzyzaniak, Kenzie Ranke, and Riley Gluska. Okay, so the photos down below, on the left-hand side, Cooper Kasprick, grade 6, getting his hockey cap signed. And in the photo above, Haley Krzyzaniak with her former grade 7 teacher, Mark Ranka. Well, I must say that would be quite a thrill for those young people to meet somebody like Haley, a hometown girl. I'm sure she had some very inspiring words to impart to those young people. Okay, over the page, this is the Looking Back section, research by Cecil Pittman. We're on page 2. So 80 years ago, on Tuesday, May 4th, 1937, Mountain Avenue is to have another fine brick building. Work was begun last week on the new Alguire block between Alguire's Billiard Hall and the Bank of Commerce. It will be a one-story building about 62 by 33 feet with a full-size basement, and it will be constructed with arrangements for 2 store premises for rental purposes. William Clyde and O. Ramstead have the contract. William Pello is digging for the foundation. And 70 years ago, Thursday, May 1st, 1947, Stephen Benson receives birthday congratulations, 85. Stephen Benson was born on May 2nd, 1862, in the township of Manvers, County Durham, Ontario. Being the 6th in a family of 4 sons and 5 daughters born to Mr. and Mrs. Stephen Benson. He was driving a horse on the farm at the age of 9 years, getting most of his schooling in the winter months, and secured his entrance at Omemee High School in 1883. But on the death of his father at the end of the year, 1883, he took over the management of a 250-acre farm. And 60 years ago, Thursday, May 1st, 1957, W.G. Gibb Weir MP for Portage Neepawa and Liberal candidate for the constituency in the June 10th election, was highly praised Monday evening by Prime Minister St. Laurent. In his opening remarks to 3,000 persons in Winnipeg, the Prime Minister described Mr. Weir as a tower of strength as his preliminary assistant. The Portage member was also described by Mr. St. Laurent as a great Liberal for Manitoba. And 50 years ago, Tuesday, May 1st, 1967, Chicago, April 27th. The National Safety Council announced today the Neepawa Salt Plant of the Canadian Salt Company Limited, located in Neepawa, has been presented the Council's Award for Merit for its excellent safety record. The award is presented only where an establishment's record satisfied rigid requirements laid down in the Council's award planning for recognizing good industrial safety records. Howard Pyle, president of the National Safety Council, in a letter of congratulations to Martin F. O'Day, manager, explained that the local plant qualified for the award because of its injury-free period of 885,171 man-hours from August 30th, 1960 to December 30th, 1966. And 40 years ago, Thursday, May 5th, 1977, the selection committee for the Kem Frampton Athlete of the Year Award has made its selection for 1976. This year, selected as Neepawa's Male Athlete of the Year is grade 12 student Rick Fraser, and Female Athlete of the Year in Neepawa is Mrs. Marilyn Buchanan. This is the first year the trophy has been presented. It was donated last year by a number of Neepawa sports bodies in honor of Kem Frampton, who was retiring from the position of sports writer at the Neepawa Press. And 30 years ago, Thursday, May 7th, 1987, the Neepawa Press was presented a first place and 2 third place awards during the Better Newspaper competition. And I'm going to skip along there to 20 years ago. Monday, May 5th, 1997, watching the flood of the century seep into southern Manitoba caused Glennis Black to spring into action last week. The Neepawa nurse organized a massive pickup of supplies for flood-stricken Manitobans, ranging from bedding and blankets to canned food and toys. It's been absolutely incredible, Black said of the response. I got this brainwave last Friday and donations have just poured in. Black said a trailer full of donations for families displaced by the flood has already been sent into Winnipeg. It will be distributed by the Red Cross and Salvation Army. And let's see what notices we have here. Still on page 2 at the Neepawa Library. Join us for another in our series of Manitoba authors. Sharon Arksey, A-R-K-S-E-Y, will be reading and doing a book signing of her book, The Waiting Place. And this is going to take place Thursday, May 11th at 5:30 p.m. And if you don't know where the library is, it's right across from the Royal Bank at 280 Davidson Street. The Neepawa Wildlife Gun and Collectible Show, Buy, Sell, Trade, Neepawa. This is taking place at the Neepawa Yellowhead Center, 175 Mountain Avenue. And this will take place Saturday, May 13th from 9 to 4 p.m. Admission is $5, 12 and under free. Lunch is available. And if you want some more information, you can phone or text Harris 204-476-2553. and Harris's email is hjlowe, L-O-W-E, @mymts.net. Okay, over to the opinion page on page 3. And the first opinion comes from Mike Milkey, author of the report, Corporate Welfare Cash, 21st Century Justifications and Billion-Dollar Bills to Come. Green corporate welfare is growing. Here's a warning for taxpayers already frustrated with corporate welfare directed to the aerospace and automotive sectors. Selected energy companies are also increasingly in receipt of taxpayer cash, and the reasons offered up are often environmental in nature. Some background. When it comes to energy corporate welfare, economists often argue over what is a subsidy. But one clear and defensible method is to ask this question: how much money does a government disperse or direct to a company not for services or goods, but as grants, loans, or above-market payments? To arrive at that answer, I filed multiple access to information requests, reviewed Auditor General reports, and scoured government announcements. I then focused on Natural Resources Canada, NRC, the federal department most likely to spend taxpayer cash to energy companies, the province of Alberta, where energy subsidies might well show up if they exist, and the province of Ontario, due to its chronic defense of multiple corporate welfare programs. The data was split into two main categories based on the justifications for government support. The first was traditional, references to claimed job creation or the need to boost a sector. The second was added after environmental justifications kept appearing in the data, that a government grant or loan would make some process or product greener. Here's what was found. Of $3.3 billion dispersed by natural resources between the year 2000 and 2016, $2.6 billion, or over 79%, went to energy companies touting green projects. About 14%, or $472 million, was given or loaned to those that promised technological advances. The department also cut checks worth $196 million, 6%, to companies for carbon capture and storage, to Shell Canada and Enhance Energy, for example. In Ontario, between 2004 and 2015, $1.5 billion in traditional corporate welfare went to companies that promised manufacturing or technological improvements. But Ontario's biggest corporate welfare bill resulted from the global adjustment fees on Ontarians' power bills. The province's Auditor General characterizes such fees as excess payments to generators over the market price for electricity. In other words, Ontario's mandated corporate welfare subsidy to utility and energy companies, but delivered via consumer power bills. The cost was $37 billion between 2006 and 2014 for such green energy subsidies. In Alberta, between 2011 and 2017, and calculating both past and announced subsidies to business, it appears that of $6.7 billion in subsidies, 67%, or $4.5 billion, went to green initiatives, renewables, energy. Another 18%, or $1.2 billion, went to carbon capture and storage. Another $820 million, or 12%, was geared to traditional corporate welfare for the province's petrochemical sector. And about $140 million, 2%, was for subsidies for other types of industries, such as microbreweries. For the record, corporate welfare spent for green justifications suffers from the same flaw spotted in traditional excuses. To pick a potential winner among many losers is a casino-like guessing game at taxpayers' expense. It's also a transfer of someone else's wealth, among other reasons to avoid the practice. Worryingly, the most expensive corporate welfare checks have yet to be written and cashed. In Ontario, the Auditor General forecasts excess payments to generators over the market price will total $133 billion between 2015 and 2032. This to further green Ontario's electricity grid. That compares with an estimated $913 million in more traditional corporate welfare expected to be spent by 2026. In Alberta, the biggest future corporate welfare risk is not green, but stems from the province's guaranteed toll payments to the Northwest Refinery near Edmonton. Dating from commitments made by the previous government, the province, as former Alberta Finance Minister Ted Morton described it, is on the hook for decades worth of toll payments. The Alberta Northwest deal is complicated, but the government committed taxpayers to $25.1 billion in outlays for decades, including an initial $324 million loan. The province hopes to recoup all that and more in the sale of refined government-owned bitumen. I don't think I've got that right. But you know what I mean, B-I-T-U-M-E-N, sorry. It's a risky bet on future oil prices. Overall, on corporate welfare, governments are finding new reasons to separate taxpayers from their wealth. Government interference in the marketplace is growing with green energy rationalizations. And again, that opinion came from Mike Milkey, the author of Corporate Welfare Cash, 21st Century Justifications and Billion-Dollar Bills to Come. So there is a second opinion, and this is a letter to the editor. This comes from Tracy Young Ridgden, Community Mental Health Services, Prairie Mountain Health. Get loud with Prairie Mountain Health. Prairie Mountain Health, PMH, is encouraging you to #GetLoud for Mental Health Week. This annual event takes place during the first week of May to encourage people from all walks of life to learn, talk, reflect, and engage with others on all issues of mental health. This year, Prairie Mountain Health is dedicating the whole month of May to #GetLoud. That means speaking up for those around you and for yourself, speaking out against the stigma directed at people with mental illnesses, using your voice to raise awareness and build support. A weekly calendar of events are planned for May and can be found by visiting our website at www.prairiemountainhealth.ca. We ask you, show us how you, your family, your workplace, your school, or your community is getting loud for the chance to win some great prizes. Show us how you are participating by sending us your pictures to share along with information and get loud details to K Lindsay, so that's K Lindsay at pmh-mb.ca, or use #PMHMentalHealth. For more information, you can also visit www.mentalhealthweek.ca. Okay, I am now on page 4, and this is by Kate Jackman Atkinson. Students share a recipe for hope. So before we get into the story, maybe I'll read the captions to the photos here. These were submitted photos. So in the top photo, there's quite a group of young people in that one. The senior school members of NACI's Hope Group spent March 14th volunteering at Winnipeg Harvest. And above left, I guess that's here, the recipe kits contain a recipe and all, or most all, of the necessary ingredients. The package is all wrapped up in tea towel. Oh, the package is all wrapped up in tea towels. That'll be that picture there. So I guess that was above right. Oh, I guess it's about to be wrapped up in a tea towel. And now, above right, students preparing the recipe kits at the school. So from left, Shelby Gluska, Claire Beaumont, Brooke Allen, and Brenna McLaughlin. And on the left-hand side, students packaging pasta at Winnipeg Harvest. Okay, I'll read the story. This year, members of HOPE, H-O-P-E, NACI's social justice group, tried something different for their donations to area food banks, recipe kits. The donation of the kits and the time they spent volunteering at Winnipeg Harvest are part of the group's work to help those in need close to home, as well as internationally. Last year, the group prepared sock rolls to give to local food banks, and this year they were looking for something to do that was more food related. Over the course of a couple of months, they came up with the idea of making the kits, which include a recipe and most or all of the necessary ingredients. The kits are then wrapped up in a tea towel that can be reused. Grade 10 student and HOPE member Kaylin Hankey explained that students collected all the necessary food for the kits. The group listed all of the canned goods they needed, and for each item a student brought, they got their name entered in a draw to win $50. The campaign was called Cash for Cans and was open to all students. Any necessary items that weren't donated were purchased. Shop Easy supported the initiative by offering the students the missing products at a discounted price. In total, the students made 105 kits. Neepawa Salvation Army requested 10 kits, and the remainder went to Winnipeg Harvest. The students took the packages to Winnipeg Harvest when they spent a day there volunteering. The senior school students went March 14th, and since most of them had already been, they skipped the tour and got right to work sorting, packing, and cleaning. They also had the chance to hear a presentation from 2 of the food bank's clients. The middle years students went March 21st. They began their visit with a tour of the facility before starting their jobs for the day. Hankey said that 2 things stood out to her about their visit to Winnipeg Harvest. One was the amount of food and items handled by the charity. The other was the personal stories told by the 2 clients. People think that someone uses a food bank because they are lazy, but circumstances such as accidents or disability can make it difficult for someone to provide food for their families, she said. Okay, now here's a bit of a history page here on page 5. The Connell House, an example of post-war ingenuity. Many of you, this is by George Connell, by the way. Many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with the 2-story house at the bottom of the hill on the east side of town at the corner of the Carberry Road. Well, I grew up in that house and was recently asked to explain the unique history of that home. So the following is the story as I remember it, how it came to be. My parents, Argyle and Anna Connell, were the original builders owners of the property. My father was a veteran of World War II and as such was eligible for favorable loans from the Veterans Land Act VLA program to purchase property and farmlands. So with that program available to them in the late 1940s, they made their applications for the monies to purchase the property at the bottom of the town hill. I'm not sure exactly how many acres the land contained, but I believe it was in the neighborhood of around 5 acres. Once they had been approved for the money at very preferred rates, they made the land purchase and began to make plans to build their dream home on that land. However, my father soon realized that they were going to require more money from the VLA to purchase materials to build that house. So the application was made for those extra funds. Now keep in mind that the VLA, being a frugal, yes, there actually was a government department that was Department of the federal government, where the people who were in charge of distributing the said funds, and as we know, most government departments are not known for being overly frugal. However, in this case, the VLA wasn't so forthcoming with the requested dollars. So where did the materials come from? This being the post-war era, there were many old British Commonwealth Air Training Centers, airports, left all over the prairie provinces, as well as all their infrastructure. During this period, the government was busy decommissioning these properties and dismantling them. So there was a plethora of former barracks and housing units being disposed of. With this in mind, the VLA instead offered my father all the lumber and hardware that he might require to build their home from the buildings being torn down at the Neepawa airport. With this gold mine of material offered to them, my parents quickly shifted into high gear to build their humble home. But with the opportunity before them to use whatever materials they required, the plans quickly changed to building a 2-story home with a self-contained revenue-generating suite on the 2nd floor to assist with paying back their loans. That suite over the years was home to a virtual who's who of Neepawa residents. The list goes on and on. When we attended the Neepawa 125 celebrations, I met up with many of these folks, and my wife was amazed. She asked me if there was anyone in Neepawa who hadn't lived in that suite at one time or another. A partial list of the tenants include the Dr. Watt family, George Bates family, Susan Bates family, Eleanor Nicholson Pazowski before she married Cliff Nicholson, Doreen Sage Spicer before she was married, Gary and Debbie Tibbett, Ron and Inky Forsman, and Alf and Christina Long, probably longest tenants to live there. I'm sure now that I think about it, there were probably several other homes around Neepawa built from the same source of materials, as there were many other veterans in the area who I'm sure would have been eligible for the same considerations from the VLA. Now, once the home was built, they needed to have a reliable source of water, and the town system did not extend down into the valley on the south side of the highway. So they had to come up with their own supply. My father had local character Bill Greentree witch a well for him. And once it was dug and sampled, it turned out to be a doozy. Water tests came back from the lab in Winnipeg stating it was some of the best water ever sampled in the Neepawa area. Big score. When the house was originally built, it was heated by a coal-fed gravity heat furnace. I remember my father having to get up in the middle of the night in the wintertime to stoke that furnace so that we all had continuous heat through to the morning. I also remember having to clean that furnace every weekend and haul the ashes out to spread them on the garden plot, as the ash was an excellent fertilizer. In the early 60s, my parents had the house converted to natural gas heat, and I will always remember watching with glee when that old monster coal furnace was hauled away to the dump. What a wonderful day it was when that dirty, unpleasant job was forever banished from our home. Unique considerations. At the time my parents built their home, the Manitoba Highways Department did not have a master plan for highways throughout the province. Years later, they eventually did draft up a master plan, and as such, my parents' home, due to its proximity within 1,000 feet of the corner of the number 4, now Highway 16, and number 5 highways, fell under the scope of these plans. However, because they had built their home in the years prior to the development of those plans, they were officially grandfathered out of the restrictions those plans mandated. As such, the Highways Department, in contractual form, agreed that should the department ever decide to develop a major interchange at that intersection, they would pay for the moving or the purchase of my parents' home and all associated buildings as long as they were owned by my parents. Now this continues over on to page 8, which is the back page of the paper. So that's where I am now. However, that agreement was to be considered as null and void upon sale of the property by the original owners. So in effect, when my folks sold the property, that agreement went away forever. Now, as far as I'm aware, all future owners of the home and property are on their own as far as moving or demolishing the existing buildings if a major intersection were to be built there. Not that that is likely to happen at any time in the near future. We had some of the most awesome neighbors down there in the valley. The Vivians, Evelyn and Lewis and Lee, lived right next door to us, and as such, I ended up basically with 2 sets of parents and a second sister in Lee. Scotty and Rita Burnett lived just across the road on the other side of the White Mud River, and as such, I also considered them to be family as well. I was probably over there as much as I was at home, came and went from their home at will, and was welcomed at all times. I likely ate as many meals there as at home. Across the highway at one time, when I was quite young, the partakers had a home, and I used to be there a lot as well, playing with the younger boys. The Kaspricks lived just to the south of us, and I also spent many hours at their home with the boys. Then just a block to the north of our place was the Lions River Bend Park, where I virtually lived in the summer months. If my mom couldn't find me during the day, she would come there, and sure enough, she would find me. Because the property had several acres of land, we always had a very large garden, as well as a couple of horse pastures where my sister kept her horses. I remember many hot, sweaty, back-breaking hours and days spent in the garden, prepping, planting, hoeing, and picking all the various vegetables that my mom and dad grew there. However, I do remember the fun we kids would also have raiding that garden as the plants matured and neared picking time. There were certainly some excellent raiding parties held, and we ate raw veggies till we were so full we thought that we would burst. Who knew that what we were doing was eating the foods that our folks wanted us to eat all along? Pretty crafty of them. Education was involved. Many of my friends will remember that my mother, who was a school teacher, ran a kindergarten in the basement of our house for several years. I often joke that I was the only kid in town who went to kindergarten for about 3 years in a row before I was promoted to regular school. I never fail to run into someone when I'm home that mentions, "I remember going to your mom's kindergarten." This was probably one of the most successful small businesses in town in those days, as it was the only kindergarten in town, and my mom was widely known as an extremely capable and a stern and very strict teacher. So that, in a nutshell, albeit a rather large one, is the history of that big house on the corner of the Carberry Road as I remember it. There is a picture here, and the photo is courtesy of the Connell family. Anna Connell, right there, taught kindergarten in the basement of the home. The author, George Connell, can be seen on the left making the bridge. He's got very jaunty plaid pants on. Beverly Wareham is at the blackboard printing out her name. The names of the other children are unknown. So that article certainly brings back a lot of memories for me, as it probably does to a lot of our listeners. Okay, I am now on page 6, and this is Rick Sparling's Where Are They Now? Catching Up with Individuals column. So having covered most of the individuals featured in his most recent book, Amateur Hockey in Neepawa, a scrapbook, local author and sports historian Rick Sparling has attempted to locate and catch up with some of the individuals featured in his first book, The History of Public School Hockey in Neepawa. So the first one is Kaz Holland, who was the coach of the 1951-52 girls hockey, the Neepawa Public School Sharpshooters. And that photo is courtesy of Yvonne Allen, formerly Yvonne Wagner, I believe. Kaz Holland was born near Elk Ranch, Manitoba, and moved to Eden and then to Neepawa, where he went to school from 1944 to 55. During this time frame, he played hockey in both the school hockey program and in minor hockey from Pee Wee to Junior B. He was also a member of the first Little League team in the Dominion, the 1950 Neepawa Tigers. Kaz worked for Reg Williams in the Red and White store from 1952 to 54 and joined Manitoba Telecom Services in 1955. He retired from MTS in 1993 as the service construction manager for the Winklen-Morden area. Kaz and his wife and best friend were married in 1988. They are still active in a business they started together selling used vehicles, K&G Enterprises. He enjoys fishing, hunting, big game, and golfing at the beautiful Minnewasta Golf and Country Club in Morden. So over to the right, the next featured individual is Murray Red Stewart, who was the coach of the 1951-52 girls hockey Neepawa Public School goal getters. Murray Red Stewart had a television repair shop at the back of the IOOF Hall in Neepawa after leaving school, and after a while there headed out to the West Coast, where he worked for famous players Cable TV CO. He went to CAE Electronics and worked for Cable TV, selling and setting up antennas, checking radar systems. He returned to famous players once again and then worked for the Black Knight Cable Company before going into his own business, windows and doors, plastic. He operated that business for about 7 years, and in 1998 he retired. Murray was married with 4 children, and his second wife, Margot Renton, passed away in 2014. Murray does woodworking as a hobby and has been a life member of the Green Acres Golf Club for over 28 years. He has retired to Richmond, BC. Now there is a correction here. In the Wednesday, April 26th edition of the Neepawa Press, a sub-headline for Where Are They Now incorrectly identified Cheryl Sparling as Donna Mae Bell. The press apologizes for the error. Okay, just below that last article on page 6, there's one submitted from the Neepawa Library Family History Series. In this year of the nation's sesquicentennial, never heard that word before. Many of us are thinking not just of Canada's history, but of our own family histories in this country and province. To inspire and encourage would-be genealogists, Neepawa Library is pleased to present the following series of events. On May 11th at 5:30, Sharon Arksey of Langruth will be presenting her new novel, The Waiting Place. This is a book of fiction, but it contains much of what Sharon knows from her life in Manitoba and in her career as an agricultural journalist. In Sharon's own words, I had been writing about farm life for a long time, but most of what I had written had been nonfiction. The column I wrote for 25 years could be classified as creative nonfiction. I wanted now to address the same topic in a different genre. Set against the background of a modern-day cattle farm, The Waiting Place chronicles the pregnancy and labor of a young farm wife, drawing also from the experiences of other female family members. Then on June 1st at 5:30 p.m., Diane Bryden joins us to show how she and her father researched and published the stalwart Brydens, from Scotland to Galt to Portage Prairie, a family history of 100 years in Canada, the recently released book detailing one of Manitoba's pioneering families. Diane's father, Jim Bryden, began the project over 30 years ago, before the internet made hunting down documents easy. And when Diane retired in 2013, she joined her father in completing the book. During her presentation in Neepawa, Diane will tell us how finding documentary evidence contradicted many of family stories and fleshed out many others that were previously incomplete. Now that you're inspired to do your own search, we'll follow these author presentations with a family history research workshop by Kathy Lewandowski of Riding Mountain. Kathy has years of experience doing family history research and will share tips on where to start your genealogy search and an overview of options for organizing and preserving the information you discover. This one-day workshop will be held in the Neepawa Library multi-purpose room on Saturday, June 17th from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Registration is $20 per person and must be made in advance. Participants must also bring a bagged lunch to make the most of the day. Registration will be taken at the Neepawa Library up to the workshop date. So if you want more information on any of these events, please call the library at 204-476-5648. Okay, I am now in the classified section, and there's a few ads that might be of interest to some of our listeners. And of course, there is a little game section here. There's Sudoku. Never tried it. Can't say it. Okay, so now I'm in the last page, and this is page 8, and there is a great aerial shot here sent in by Marge Goodwin. Marjorie Goodwin shared this picture with us. It is facing south along Mountain Avenue and was likely taken from her father's airplane. She thinks the photo was taken in the late 1960s or early 1970s because the old hockey arena is still opposite the Legion Hall. The Beautiful Plains Archives holds a number of interesting old photos of Neepawa and would welcome more contributions, whether of Neepawa or the villages in the Beautiful Plains area. So her father, Marge Greenhall Goodwin's father, of course, was Walter Greenhall. Okay, I think that's all the reading that I have for today. We will be back with the banner reading later this week by, I believe, Kathy Jasnick is the one that's still doing the banner reading. And so it was nice to be back with you again, and we'll probably see you again in the next few weeks. Bye for now.